It's really good to be part of this initiative that World Sailing are doing, and thanks to the GP14 class for getting involved. This is the first of 3 talks that we're doing this week, and with a real focus on female sailors and getting involved in sailing as a female. So this evening we're going to be talking about female helms, or helming with a lighter crew in the case of Ross, who's clearly not a female helm. I hope you really enjoy it. I think, having got to know more about Sarah and Ross over the last week or two getting ready for this, we've a lot of varied experiences. I, for example, came from crewing into helming. Ross has been helming for a long time. Sarah's come through South Staffs and Team GB. So I think there'll be a bit of something there for everyone, I hope, be it kind of the technical side, the tactics, or even just the fun and the enjoyment of sailing and racing in mixed fleets. So what I might do just before I introduce you to us, I don't know, Vanessa, would you like to say anything about the Worlds and Skerries and our hope to get 20 female teams?
Yes. The GP14 class already recognises female boats, the first female boats and the first female crew at events. However, for next year's World Championships at Skerries, we are intending to hold a number of World Championships within the same event. So we're starting off with trying to encourage some more females in, along with a mixed, an open and a youth World Championship as well. This all depends, as Katie mentioned, on getting the minimum criteria, which is 20 entries. So we would like you to join us in Skerries, enjoy sailing the GP14, and part of the reason why we joined the World Sailing Female Festival was to try and raise awareness of us as a class and what we're trying to do. So thank you all for joining. And I'll let the people that you've come to listen to talk.
Yeah, and just to add on Skerries, I know I was speaking to some of the organisers last week. They really hope to have well north of 100 entries overall, maybe close to 130, 140. So it's a really, really good opportunity to race one design, proper, big fleet dinghy racing. So just to add that tuppence worth as well. So what I might do is I might just introduce you to Ross and Sarah. Ross Kearney, if you want to maybe give us a little background to yourself and how you started sailing and getting into the GP14 class.
Yeah, no worries. So as Kay said, Ross Kearney, I've from Northern Ireland, just outside Belfast originally. Grew up sailing at a local yacht club, being chucked out in a squib with my dad, I think at the age of about 3 or 4, just on a Tuesday or Thursday night, and eventually just did a bit of crewing for him, and then came through the Mirror fleet in Ireland. Back then the Mirror fleet was really, really big fleet racing, so every single regional event you get over sort of 100, 150 boats. It was a really thriving class back then, and I crewed until I was about 16. Tend to be the way in Ireland. You crewed, did your time before you got too big and got stuck in the back of the boat. So I then helmed for a few years and had a couple of good results, and managed to win the Mirror Worlds in 2005. I then took myself over to England and got a job at Pennell and Backs as a sailmaker. Following that win, I didn't really know what I wanted to do, so I went into the sort of marine industry and worked over in Northampton for 7 years and sailed various classes, which was great experience. Sailed fireballs and scorpions and larks, and then eventually got given a GP. They wanted someone to sail GPs, and it was quite a similar step up from a Mirror, really. It's a very similar sort of style of sailing. Then I met Jane, my now wife, and stayed in England for 15 years and just moved back there last year to Northern Ireland with Jane and my two sons. So
a new adventure.
New adventure. So we've sailed GPs now since. So I left P&B and I bought myself a GP. I really enjoyed the class, enjoyed the racing. It was a very similar sort of technique and standard what I'm kind of used to. You get big fleets and it's very close tactical racing, which is what I really enjoyed.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was that's my sort of background.
Thank you.
And,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and some good results there in the last few years, Ross, as well. So Sarah Norbury, I only met Sarah 2 or 3 weeks ago, so we've had some good chats since. If you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, Sarah.
Yeah, no, it's a pleasure to be here. Yeah, I kind of grew up sailing GPs. I'm from South Staff, so it's a club in the Midlands, and tiny little lake, if anyone knows it. And yeah, but fortunately, there's a really, really strong fleet of sailors there, and we've got some great sailors and had many national champions come out of that club. So yeah, it was a fantastic place to grow up sailing. And I grew up sailing kind of GPs and larks, but ended up moving into the Optimist class when I was younger, and sailed Optimist for many years until I was 15, and had some good results in Optimist as well, winning a few female national titles. And then moved into 420 class, where I also managed to win a few national titles in the 420 as well, and fortunately World and European under 19 bronze as well, which was really great. And then got selected for the British sailing team, where I competed for Great Britain, training for the Olympics for about 4 years. So
Okay.
I've been really helming since I was about 7 years old. Well, not 7, maybe 10 years old, from the Optimist class. So it's really great. Helming's in my blood. I love crewing as well, but yeah, I probably class myself mostly as a helm. And
Okay.
yeah, hopefully I can give a bit of insight into my time in the GP, which I was in there in 2019 for the national.
Okay, well done. Yeah, thank you, Sarah. Just to give a little bit of background to myself, I'm living in Dublin. I sail at the Sutton Dinghy Club, but I grew up in Cork, and I would have been part of a big sailing family down there, where we would have competed with each other and against each other, and enjoyed as much with and against doing well. So I was sailing national 18s a lot, mirrors and lasers and so on. And then in my 20s, I spent a lot of time crewing with some really good friends, mat racing and sailing Etchels. So we did that for quite a few years, would have done some world championships and so on, but all the time I was crewing, which was fine, and it was really enjoyable. And I think I learned a lot about a race course, crewing, and being able to watch what was going on. And then in about 2013, I'd had a break from sailing for a few years, and I was mad to get back into it. I just actually had my first daughter, and I was living in Sutton at the time. So the GP fleet is very strong in Sutton, and it would always have been a fleet that I would have heard a lot about nationally and internationally as well. And it always attracted me. So I dipped my toe in, and I also decided I'd try helming, which was great. And I've been doing that ever since. I've been sailing with Michelle Rowley since 2014. She started sailing with me after at the time, and we've had some really good results here. We were combined the first female crew at the Worlds in 2018 in Mounts Bay. I was the first female helm, and we've had some very good results in Ireland as well, kind of working our way up from the silver through to the gold fleet. And you know, we've had some top 2 results at regional events here, which we were delighted with. So it's a different history to Ross and Sarah, in that I crewed for so long. But I'm hoping that if there's anyone out there this evening who's thinking of maybe switching from crewing to helming, that you can see that there is a path, and it's very doable and very enjoyable. So the other thing, just to add, if anyone has questions, there is a chat, and Vanessa has kindly said she'd just keep an eye on it. So if there's questions that come up as we go, pop them in, or at the end, we're very happy to answer any questions you might have. So we'll get into the thick of it. Ross, I'll start with you. So you've obviously sailed, you know, with many different crews, be they stronger men, lighter women, and so on. So I think it would be really good maybe to get your views on what you found beneficial for lightweight sailing, you know, especially on the helm, and how you set up the boat and so on.
Great, yeah, thanks, Kitty. Yeah, like you said, my main focus is really not so much the male versus female aspect. It's more the sort of weight difference that I think is the important aspect here. And I've sailed with a you know, like a 90 kilo sort of big, tall, fit rugby player for many years, and then sailed with Jane as well. So I guess my main sort of difference would be there are a few techniques you can use in terms of boat setup to try and help sort of deal with those different situations. GPs are very simple boats. You know, some of the other classes I sailed, there's a lot more playing around with the settings, whereas GP, you don't really mess too much. So it's a real nice, simple boat to get into, make go reasonably fast quite quickly. And the main difference would be, I say if I had a couple of top tips for sort of upwind sailing with something a bit lighter, it would be, a bit of rig tension, slightly more than I would maybe use with a heavier crew, just to flatten the entry. I know it sounds very simple, but make sure that the boat's very flat, and if you're struggling, just make sure you're doing everything you can to de-power. But yeah, those are the sort of main aspects upwind, in terms of just adjusting your settings, and a wee bit your technique as well, in terms of sailing something a bit lighter. But in a GP, you can get away with it quite all the gains. So that's where I would say, actually, in many situations, having that lighter crew weight all up, you can get a lot of benefit downwind. And the difference is huge. Like, you might lose 3 boat lengths upwind, but you gain 100 boat lengths downwind on 2 reaches. So that's kind of a very brief overview of some of the things, and I can go into more detail in terms of techniques if anyone has any specific questions, whatever. But generally speaking, I was
it's interesting about the benefits of being lighter. That some I know of crews here who are trying to lose weight because they appreciate what can be gained on the downwind if you are that bit lighter. So it's important not to forget that.
When I first started, the crew weight that people were telling me was really quite heavy, all up, in terms of what you should want. Now you see people sort of 20 stone upwards, 19 stone all up, and sailing the boat, really well. And there's absolutely techniques to be able to do that. There's so many other things. Once you get the techniques and you set your boat up for it, there's also choice of sails. You can help yourself out by having a slightly flatter cut of sail or whatever as well. So there's lots of different options for people out there now to sail multi-size crew weights, really.
And Sarah, I know when we spoke a few weeks ago, you had some really interesting techniques kind of for, again, sailing as a lighter crew, and you've obviously been helming as a light helm for quite a while, be it in GPs or other classes. How do you manage the tricky conditions or the challenges that sometimes being lighter presents?
I think it's just building on what Ross said, really. Like, it's I think a boat setup can't be underestimated. It's really, really important. And the best thing about the GP class is that you can ask anyone on the beach. Someone's going to always help you. Like, I know for sure when I did the nationals, I jumped in 2019, had no idea what I was doing really and how to set it up. But when went to Ross and the other guys and the people who were at the front of the fleet and asked, can you help me set my boat up right? Like for this weather, it was like 25 knots. And they all came up, like, I got help when I needed it. So I think that's another thing. Like, if you're not sure exactly what to do, you can always just ask. But I think the main things for me would be your Cunningham. I think, like, yanking the bejesus out of your Cunningham as you're going upwind is really, really important, and for the reaches as well. Another few tricks you can use: make sure you got your board up right, board up on the reaches. Not trying to bear away with too much board down is always disastrous. So getting a bit of board up before you round the mark, strapped pretty tight. I think when you're going upwind, and easing a bit of kicker for going around the windward mark is always a handy tip for avoiding those capsizes.
Which we want to avoid.
Could you just tell us a little bit about your challenges that you've sort of faced in terms of being a bit lighter with yourself, Michelle, in a way, but also talk a little bit about maybe where you get your advantages from?
I know, because as I said, sometimes the advantages can be forgotten about. So for Michelle and I, we would be on the lighter side, but we're quite different in size to each other. So even that, like, when you have to find your right position, say downwind, when you're balancing the boat and so on. But we found things like, bringing the centerboard up a little bit upwind definitely makes a difference. And just, things like the rig and the kicker, we're cranking those on maybe 5 knots earlier than other crews. So you just have to be not afraid to depower if you need to. Ratchets on the jib sheets have been very helpful for us. And also just we've changed some of the setup of the uphaul downhauls. to help Michelle, who was shorter, say, than the person who used to crew the boat before. So there's lots of little things, and as Sarah said, asking around and seeing what works for other crews is really good. But I do like to think about the advantages though, and as I said, you know, some crews trying to lose weight because they appreciate what can be gained downwind, and that would be a resounding kind of message that I would hear, especially in the really big events where you have, you know, a really long downwind. You can really make up an awful lot, and I think as well, like even things for like lake sailing or shifty sailing, if you're a lighter crew, you can kind of, you know, throw in that quick tack if there's a wind shift, maybe easier than a heavier crew might be able to do. So I think there are definitely advantages. If you obviously being fit helps, and we all need to work at that, and life is definitely easier the fitter you are. But I certainly wouldn't let it put someone off sailing as a lighter team in the GP.
I'd add on that, I think, Katie, like in the light stuff, it's being lighter means you can get away with a lot more. I think, like being a lot more smooth in the boat and stuff like that. It's much easier when you don't weigh very much, and like GPs, they're very sensitive, I think, to change especially in the light stuff of how fast you go. So like being a bit lighter and not having those big heavy boots, you know, around the bottom of the boat
tramping around,
an advantage.
So Ross, I was going to ask you as well, just, you know, if you're approaching a race or an event, maybe a long event or whatever, as a lighter crew, would you have maybe slightly different approaches than you might necessarily have had with a heavier crew? To be very careful how I word things without insulting anyone.
I'll be looking at the forecast a lot. I'm praying for light winds, but no, all joking aside, you would obviously, your tactics would be, you know, in terms of getting all the boats set up right, that's the most important thing, to get out in the water so you can concentrate on actually doing the tactics and not worrying about your boat setup. Because once your head's in the boat worrying why I'm not maybe going as fast, then you're not doing what you should be doing. So in terms of tactics, with a lot of the big GP events now, it's all gate starts, and I would definitely alter where I start on that gate depending on the wind strength and who I've got. So if it's a fairly windy, long first beat, and I'm sailing with Jane, for example, we would tend to maybe start quite late and let the Pathfinder do a lot of the beats for us. And that's definitely a valid tactic. But likewise, on the flip side, if I know that I've got a 6'2" lever on it's crewing for me, who's a big, you know, tall, heavy crew, then I might go early and get out because I know I'll be quick. So it's just trying to maybe alter those tactics, but also downwind is quite important. If I'm feeling a wee bit slower downwind, then you'd always stay quite high and really aggressive on the reaches and make sure you don't get rolled. Whereas when you're lighter, it's sometimes better to either get low quickly and get that fresh air and use your speed to go low on the reaches, or go very high, and then you've got the ability, because you've got the boat speed, to sail over the top of people. So I would definitely alter my technique in terms of crew weight, depending on the situation. And I think the other thing for the big events is like over the course of a week or 5 or 6 days of racing, you will get varied conditions. So you'll get the hard days, but you'll get hopefully the good days will come to you too, and the conditions that suit you. And Sarah, you obviously, you said you were sailing oppies from a young age, so you were nice and light in the oppies, I'm sure. And sometimes I think people think you need to be big and strong to helm a GP, but you've obviously managed to do pretty well as a lady helm. You might give us your thoughts on how as a lady helm you find the GP to sail.
I think that there's a lot of misconceptions about it being like a big man's boat. I think that obviously from the fleet you can be very competitive as a woman, and I'm sure the crews will affirm tomorrow as well, when their chat is that, you know, it's not impossible to crew either. Like, it's a big jib. I think that's probably one of the biggest concerns people have. But really, as a helm, like, I really find the main quite manageable. It's not the biggest main in the world, and with a good ratchet on, and you can also like double up on that if you need to with more blocks, like more purchases and things like that if you're struggling. It's definitely manageable. And like what Ross was saying, like both of you are saying, like the little techniques, like what Ross was saying about the reaches, I definitely agree with. Like, you can really just change up, like you have such advantages if you're a bit lighter, But in the breezy stuff, like if you're struggling to keep the boat flat and make, I think a lot of people struggle to make the reach marks, maybe when it's windy. If you're a bit lighter, you can always take the windward mark and then just sail upwind for a bit. You can take the high ground, so you're not going to get rolled. You basically just continue upwind for a bit, and then when you think you're going to lay the mark, then you can go for the hoist.
Yeah,
so that's always a good technique if it really is blowing and you think like, oh god, I might not make this mark.
Yeah.
So
Another good technique would be, if it's really windy and you're light, not hoist a kite.
We do that a bit.
And it works, absolutely works. So keep
and I think sometimes as well, like if it's really windy and you're just kind of concentrating on surviving, it can become a bit follow the leader, and you forget that you have choices. So like, as you said, maybe stay high off the weather mark for 10 or 20 or more boat lengths, and then start to come down. So just because everyone else has gone one way doesn't necessarily mean it's the right decision for all. So and I know for myself it's hard sometimes to get that perspective when it's a busy weather mark or a busy race.
Something a bit different, eh?
Yeah.
Can I ask you, Katie, just a little bit about sort of coming back into helming? And I think it's a real important point that we lose so many people in this sport in sort of the teenage years, and getting them back in again can be quite difficult. So I think you've obviously mentioned you've done a lot of helming when you're younger, and then went away and did a bit of crewing. Tell us about coming back into the class as a helm, and how you find that transition.
I actually had a break for a few years, so I was just mad keen to get back in. And the way it worked was, I was looking to sail the Nationals in Sutton. I didn't have a boat at the time, and Hugh Gill found me a boat to helm, and paired me up. So I think like there was definitely benefits to having crewed, because I think, as I said earlier, you have a great perspective of the race course. But one of the things I had to do was stop looking around too much, because I was so used to, lighthousing, where the fleet was, marks, whatever you're looking at. And maybe it's because I wasn't so used to helming that every time I did that, the boat would slow right down. I didn't quite have that natural feel. So when I started sailing with Michelle, we would have spent a lot of time just doing some training together, be it just for an hour, where it was just us and we were practicing really basic maneuvers and kind of imagining other boats or scenarios or whatever. So that was probably just to get me more comfortable on the helm again. And I think that like the club racing has been really good to just develop that skill and the helming and so on. And then starting to go to events and just, being on the starting line with 40 other boats, be it in Ireland or at the bigger gate starts at the Worlds. So I do think crewing is a huge benefit to bring to a helm. And I would always encourage people who are helms maybe to take a turn in the front of the boat, or in a club race, just mix it up. I think it's good for boats to do. But I'd say to anyone who's considering helming that it's very possible, and there's a great progression through the fleet, and don't underestimate the learnings that you have as a crew, and of how beneficial they are if you were to go helming.
And why did you pick the GP class?
Twofold. It was local, and it was near, and it was a very easy class to join. And also I loved one design dinghy racing, and even when I sailed keel boats, it was always one design. I wasn't one for Johnny beat me by 5 minutes, so I don't know how that works on the Echo or whatever. And it was always a fleet that I'd heard about, since I was a teenager, as being a really competitive fleet. And then you look at some of the names that appear on the world's entry list or whatever, you can see that it's held in really high regard. So if and as you said, like, it's just really good on design racing. And I think no matter where you are in the fleet, so I've come through from the silver to gold fleet here, like there's really tight racing at all levels. And sometimes you're seeing the same boats and you're having the same argy-bargy on the race course day in, day out or whatever. But I think it's really really competitive racing, and a super friendly fleet as well. As Sarah said, people are very welcoming, really happy to share their information and give you tips, and the social side is great as well. So yeah, what's not to love? So Ross, I might ask you actually, because I think a really important aspect is it is a real Melanie's involved, people sail husband, wives, sister, brothers, and whatever. You obviously are in a unique position where you have Jane very involved in the class, sailing with you or sailing with others. Or so, I have you any tips on how to balance it all, or how you find it as being a family fleet?
Oh, it's great, you know, and I would certainly have learned a lot from sailing with Jane as well, because she sailed GPs and she was sort of teenage years, and so yeah, I've learned a lot from that. But in terms of sailing as a fleet, as a family, sorry, it's brilliant. It's just trying to balance everything with the kids, and just have to save up as many
brownie points,
brownie points as we can, and get the grandparents in for maybe sitting duties. But how Jane and I kind of do it is, like, we love sailing, and we love seeing the boys seeing us going off sailing together, and I think that's really important for them to see that. But also we've learned the hard way in terms of trying to balance family life and kids at events, you know, and we've since then had to take the decision to maybe get a little bit more larger house, a bit further away from the venue, whatever, to try and bring the grandparents along to help. And I know it sounds silly, but that kind of preparation is really quite important. You know, if you're up all night with screaming kids in a tent or something, you know, you're not going to do your sort of championship very well. But you know, we try and bring them along as much as we can, and we also share. You know, we can't do all the events like that because it's not fair to ask grandparents to do every single weekend. But we often take turns. So Jay will do an event, and I'll do an event, and then we'll try and do the big ones together with the help of grandparents. So.
Yeah, and the fleet is, you know, it's really strong in the junior setup. So, you know, it's great to see youths coming in the kind of mid-teenage years, maybe if they're getting too big for an oppie or something like that, and sailing with mum or dad, and then maybe taking a boat of their own, so one boat becomes two. And it's really impressive how the GP class supports that sort of that process. Sarah, so you were involved, you know, in South, well, you still are, with South Staffs, and as you said, you're part of the British racing team. So I'd be curious to know any learnings that you had from that kind of setup and that, you know, high level, that high performance, that racing and training and so on, and how you might see that's relevant to the GP, and how you maybe approach events or approach your training sessions.
I think that's a really interesting question. It's kind of linked into what Ross was saying about like having a good setup. Like I don't have kids, but like with the grandparents and things like that, having a good home setup where you can that, I don't need to worry about that. I've got that side of things sorted is very important. And just from the little things like food and drink on the boat, making sure, you know, if it's a big day, 25 knots, that you don't run out of food when you're on the water is super important. But also, like, you know, have a look at the venue before you go, making sure there's nothing big that you're going to miss when you're out on the water, trying to have a plan before you start the race, but also kind of going with the flow and seeing where the fleet takes you as well, and trying to position yourself best on the fleet as well, trying to do some sailing before you go out, like you mentioned about the coaching, like at the club racing is really important, just trying, you know, improve that boat handling and stuff like that. I don't know how you find that, like with the doing a bit of club sailing beforehand is just to hone your skills.
I know, absolutely. And as you said, like even getting out early and practice, you know, taking your wind readings and so on. And one thing I know that I can be a fault at is you can go out, like say it's a day and there's 3 races. Before the first race, you'd be really good taking your numbers and so on. And then I never do it before the second and third race. And why would you not, you know? So they're just little things to prepare. And also, as Ross said, you know, preparing for big events, like making sure you arrive, you know, a day or 2 early, so that you've got measurement done, you've got your registration done, that there's no little headaches come your way to throw you. Because a lot of the time we'll have trained and worked really hard and spent a lot of money to get into these events. So you don't want something, you know, to hold you up that's avoidable.
Exactly.
So Katie, we're obviously trying to attract as many different people from different classes as well for this event, which would be fantastic, and you know, be great to get, you know, already existing partnerships from other classes to maybe step into a bar or boat or whatever. And like that partnership piece is, as we all know, very important. And you and Michelle have been together for quite a long time. And you talk a little bit about your sort of how you've done that and how you've been quite successful and keep
Yeah,
keep it fresh and not
yeah,
arguing and all the rest
yeah.
of it.
Yeah, to be fair now, we there's rarely a heated debate, but the first thing I'd say is, like, I'm very lucky. Michelle and I, we wouldn't have known each other particularly well when we first paired up, but we've become really, really good friends, so much so that she's the godmother of my second child. And we really enjoy it, is the first thing. We've great fun. And I think we have the same expectations. So, you know, in my 20s, when I was doing things like etchels and mat racing, I could sail all weekend if I wanted to. I could train 2 or 3 nights a week, and we were all in the same boat. We were, you know, we could commit that time, whereas I can't now, and neither can Michelle. So I think we set the same expectations. We you know, we give the same commitment, and we're very respectful as well of each other. Michelle came from a lot of team racing, and she'd sailed enterprises as well, so she brought, you know, different experience to what I brought. So I think I know it sounds really obvious, but I think that it's really important that you get on with your partner, and that you enjoy it. Like, this isn't a job. Maybe it is for some, but for us, it's something we do with our time. And if you're going to take time away from family or anything else that you might be doing, it's important that you enjoy it. And I think the other thing I'd say is, as I said, because I was crewing before, I was kind of looking around too much. I had to learn to lean on Michelle more, and she would feed me a lot of really good information. And, you know, if there's any like infringements on the race course, she might be the one to have the conversation with the boat about what's going to happen, with the other boat about what's going to happen, as opposed to me. So, and I think, you know, like, we could not sail for a year and jump on the boat, and it wouldn't take us long now to get back to where we were. Well, I say that now, we'll see in the next few events. But I think
that's really important for people who are sailing different classes together. It's, you know, you can definitely jump into GP and, you know, learn it together if you've got that partner that you already sail with. So I think that's something to consider for people who may be thinking about jumping in. And if you've got someone who you already sail with, for example, then
it would be a very seamless transition for sure. I think it'd be worth talking about our experience as well of the class. Ross, like, you've been to a couple of Worlds and UK Nationals and Irish Nationals and so on. You know, I think it's a very welcoming class, and some of the setup at the Worlds and around fleets and so on is really good. You might just give us your thoughts on that.
I think it's a really friendly class. We've all mentioned sort of the advice you'll get from people and support, but one of the things I really love about the Worlds and the big sort of nationals, when they, you know, do a buddy system, and I believe we'll be doing that for the Worlds. I think that's fantastic for anyone who's coming to an event, maybe who's not particularly experienced in that particular class, or some people who've coming to sail on the sea for the first time, or sail with over, you know, 100 boats for the first time. Having a gold, silver and bronze buddy system where you are in the same team, you're close together in a dinghy park, you know, it's fantastic. And I think having that advice and ability to share sort of stories from the day or advice on settings, etc. I think it's a real positive for the class, and it gets people mingling with different people who you may not necessarily see on the water an awful lot, but, you know, having each other on the shore, talking to each other, meeting new people, I think it's fantastic. So a real positive for me for the GP class. And
and I think even, you know, the bronze, silver and gold fleet and the progression through that is really, really good as well. And there's always a battle to be had in the fleet, no matter where you are, and prizes to be won. Sarah, you're probably thinking similar. You've had similar experiences.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that the depth of the GP class, like you said, like, there's always prizes to be won, whether it's fun stuff or you know, battles further down the fleet. I think I have a question for you guys, actually. Something you mentioned earlier is when you were saying about, you know, making sure keeping it fun and things like that. I know that when people have a bad race, or like you make a mistake, it can be a little bit challenging maybe to keep spirits up in the boat and stuff. And I wondered whether you guys had any techniques that you use for, you know, keeping spirits up when things are going wrong.
Like I can think of one or two races where I was fuming. with myself that was one of the worlds in particular when we had an opportunity to get a really good result, and I blew it. But anyway, so look, I think what I'd say, and I'd say it to my daughter about life, is just try and learn from it. Like I know if I had the situation again, what I would do different. So I think any running that you have like that, there's an opportunity to learn and move on. I think temperament is really important in sailing, and you know, trying to not lose the head, because there, even if you lose say 20 places, you might get back 3 or 4, and they might really stand to you when the results are all added up at the end of the day. Like I was never a fan of, you know, the screaming and roaring of the rules or anything like that. I think it slows a boat down. I think, you know, temperament and keeping a cool head, no matter what the situation is really important. I don't know, Ross, what about you? Maybe you've not
I've learned the hard way many a times, especially sailing with my wife, and I've certainly learned the positive attitude and encouragement is definitely the way forward. But just to sort of cover what you said, it's really really important, and you have to remember is that you're both in it together.
Yeah, I think I'd find it harder in a single-handed boat. I think to have those days. I think you can try and carry each other through.
Just remember that the person you're sailing with is trying their very best too, and there's no point in shouting and carrying on. And I guess tips and techniques for dealing with it is, you know, I think the more experienced you are together, the quicker you can have a chat about it after and go, right, well, sorry, I was being silly there, and look, you get over it. And certainly when I sail with Ed, he used to crack the jokes and that lightened us up a lot. You know, we keep things lighthearted between races, not get too serious, and I think that's really useful as well, just to try and calm you down. You don't get too uptight, really. So
yeah, definitely good tips there. Yeah, I think it's always important to focus on the next thing and try and realize that, you know, you're working for your other half as well. Like the person in the front of your boat is not going to do their best if you're you know, getting mad or frustrated with yourself or holding on to something you made a mistake on. So I think that support, realizing that, okay, I just made a mistake, but it doesn't matter because I've just got to stay calm because I need my other person to perform as best they can now, despite this that just happened. So
How are you time, Kitty?
I think we're okay. One thing I think, if we're okay for just one more minute, that I think is well worth touching on is coaching. Like the three of us, when we spoke about it before, we just spoke about the benefits of coaching and having it at the right time. And just, you know, Ross or Sarah, like areas that you found to be of benefit when you when you've had coaching, and it doesn't need to be from an Olympic level coach or anything, but even just from within the club, or things to look out for. What would you say to that?
Sarah, you carry on. You've probably a lot more experience than me.
It's a very good question. I think that there's a lot to be said for just time in the boat as well, like just getting those boat handling stuff nailed down. A few tips and tricks you can do here and there to try and keep the sheets in the right hand so you're coming out of jives. And I know I did a bit of training with Ross, and we worked on a technique where we were able to, you know, as a helm, you're able to stay up to windward out of jibes, which is super useful when it's windy. So if you're a small helm like me, and you've got a crew who's going forwards to do the pole when it's 25 knots and you're in massive waves, it's not ideal when you're only 15 So having that ability to stay up to windward and, you know, be right at the back of the boat and hanging out the back when that's happening is really useful. Just a few bits and tricks.
I think coaching is for all stages. I think that's the important thing. You know, all standards can be coached, and just being on the water and having a different opinion, looking in on the boat is just brilliant to have. And,
we can, you know, no matter where you are, you can improve.
Even if it's a club you know, organized thing with a camera even. And I know the GP class have a really good coaching setup and program. They bring people in into the fleet and to do some external coaching, and it's absolutely fantastic. So
you can always get better. I think that's the key thing, no matter. And there is always someone. Ross, I think you said a funny story about someone bringing a sprayer for their boat or whatever. You can always learn from someone, whoever, even if it's stuff like that, how to clean your boat better, or how to get it off the beach better, or how you're sailing around the course better, or tactics or anything. There's always something to learn.
Yeah, and I think even if you're not going down the road of coaching or spending money, actually having someone, if someone's in a rib and has a phone to just record you, I think if you can see footage of you in the boat and what you're doing and how you're doing it. Like sometimes I know when I come out of attack, I'm actually I can oversteer on the helm, and I might not know that at the time, but I remember someone taking a video from behind and I could see it. And my husband, who has a drone, which he has pops out the odd day, you get great footage from it. So, don't be afraid to look back at yourself. So look, I think we can wrap up there with our own sort of questions and areas we'd hope to cover. There might be a few questions maybe from the floor if anyone wants to ask us. We're more than happy to share any insights.
We've got a couple of questions from the floor. Curly asks, do you think there is anything you have to do differently to male helms?
That we have to do differently because we're female?
I think that's, yeah. If Curly wants to clarify that would be great.
Oh, you're on mute, Kearney.
That's the question. I just want to know if you feel there's anything different you do. I know that when I have girls crewing with me, well, actually my boats set up ready to girl crews because I've had them for so long. And some of the things I do are differently. I wonder what it's like at the back end.
Yeah, I think there would just be, not necessarily because of female, but just like depending on how big you are, I guess. It's like, it's more of a size thing. Like if you're small and don't weigh very much, then yeah, and you're maybe, but if you're strong and things like that, even if you're a bit smaller, you maybe don't need to make so many adjustments. So I think that setup wise, like we've already said, like you can change a lot depending on how big you are and as a team as well. And yeah, for sure. I don't know what you think, Katie.
Yeah, I think that on the setup definitely, but also I think I'd probably try and hold my own more than I would. I don't know, like I like to, if I'm in the right, I will make sure that someone knows I'm in the right. I try not to be a pushover, I think, and maybe that's just being a girl or a female or whatever. But I try and hold my own on the course. Yeah.
I think that goes for any fleet though, like having sailed in all female fleets myself, like in the 420s and the worlds and stuff, like it's potentially even tougher than the all male fleets. Like everyone's very, very out to get you and, and ruthless. So I think that you have to remember that even if it's a girl that's lining up on the start line next to you, like you're gonna get screwed over if you don't hold your own and try and hold your lane and stuff. So
and one thing I'd say about the fleet in Ireland and the UK that I've experienced is it's extremely respectful. There's no kind of looking down at you because you are a lady helm or anything. Like there's respect throughout the fleet, and which I think is probably the case in many fleets. But it certainly wouldn't deter you from getting stuck in. So I think that's a really positive thing.
Thank you. That leads us on to a question from Katie's crew, Michelle. As women helms, have you ever felt intimidated on the water?
Intimidated. I've been annoyed at some male sailors who kind of try and push their weight around a bit, but I think they might be chancing their arm, but if they don't get away with this the first time, they probably won't try it again. But they could be like that. I don't know if they're like that necessarily just because you're a female, or maybe if you were a less experienced sailor. And I think, like, I always do get, I think I said it on the talk the last time, like I do get a rush of adrenaline before a start. Like you're nervous and you're wound up. But again, I don't think that that's unique to just being a female. I think it's just the energy's going and the enthusiasm. I don't know, Sarah, what about you? Have you felt intimidated?
I think for sure, like especially when I was younger, like I think it's very easy in big fleets like to get a bit scared and stuff. Like it's perfectly normal, but I think the more you do it, the more confident you get, like the more big fleet stuff that you do, and just trying to know that there may not be as many people who look like you on the start line, but that doesn't mean that you don't deserve to be there and don't deserve to take out all your fury on the race course. So just try and think of it that way, and everyone's going to be there to support you, so there's no way that you know, you're going to be disrespected or anything. So yeah, just go for it.
And actually, one of the nicest things someone ever said to me, and it was from a good pair of sailors, that they hated being next to us on a starting line, and it was because we had nice starts. So it was, you know, it was in a very positive way. Yeah.
I think also, like, you got to remember, like, anyone who's starting in a big fleet for the first time, like Ross, I'm sure you remember, like the first time you did a 100 fleet, like 100 boat plus fleet, like it's scary. It's not just like, it is scary, and you know, but you just,
and especially the gate starts, because but the gate starts when you're trying to spot which is the pathfinder. You know, it can be very hard to see the pathfinder and the guard boat and the gate boat and so on coming down. So the big fleets, they can throw even the best of sailors, I'm sure.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Is there anybody who hasn't written a question down that would like to ask a question?
We must have covered everything, Vanessa.
Yeah. And they know where to find us. They know where to find us if there's questions.
So at that point, I think if there's no more questions, I'd like to thank Katie, Sarah and Ross for all their work in preparing this talk. I'm sure we could appreciate that it wasn't just something that they said yes to and then forgot about until tonight. So thank you very much for the three of you.
Thank you.
All you've done supporting the class and preparing to talk about it with us. And just to remind you that tomorrow night at the same time, the GP14 crews will be chatting. So we have Mel Morris, Michelle Rowley, Jane Kearney and Liz Senior chatting tomorrow night. So thank you very much to our three speakers tonight. I'm sure that if you wish to follow up on anything, either direct them through to me and I'll pass them on, or just through the Facebook page and we will pass them on to that. So, yeah, we've got a lot of good comments coming through from everybody thanking you, saying you've spoken really well. So, yeah, so I will let the three of you finish up and just say your goodbyes.
Yeah, and we'll see you over the next few evenings, which is I'm looking forward to tomorrow and Thursday.
Yeah, great. Thanks very much.
Thanks everyone. Thanks Sarah and Ross.
Yeah,
bye.
Thanks you guys. That was really great.
Thanks everybody.
Cheers guys.
Talk soon.
Love.
Bye bye.
Bye.